Good morning, good afternoon and good evening, depending on when you're actually watching this. My name is Ian Middleton. I am a travel and landscape photographer, and you can find me on ianmiddletonphotography.com and on Facebook and Instagram at Ian Middleton Photography. And this is one of my quick photography tips. Now in this tutorial we're going to look at using the highlights tool to pull back the detail in overly bright areas in your photos. Now in this case we're going to look at buildings. When we photograph buildings, particularly churches when they're lit, we usually get this problem. Now most of you know that the best time to photograph lit buildings or lit churches is in the twilight period at dusk or dawn. Now within photography, the dynamic range of the camera is much narrower than the dynamic range of our eyes. And what that means is the dynamic range is the difference between the brightest part of your scene and the darkest part of your scene. Now in a scene like this, with our eyes we would probably see all this dark area here. It would look much brighter to us. We would see more detail. In this bright area as well, we would also see more detail, but the camera cannot. And that's where the problem comes in. Now when photographing churches when they're lit, there is an optimum time when the balance between the artificial light on the church and the ambient light on the sky come within the range of the camera. So that means that you won't have any burnt out areas or overly bright areas in your picture. But the great thing about digital photography is that we can shoot a little bit earlier for this and compensate for it using one of the great many tools that we have in Photoshop, Adobe Camera Raw, Adobe Lightroom and a multitude of other photo editing and photo processing programs. So that's what we're going to look at today. In this particular photo, actually it was pretty much close to the optimum time. You can see that the difference between the two is not so great. The church itself is just maybe a touch too bright around here, but not too much. So this is very easy to do. All I'm going to do here is go up to Image, Adjustments and open my Shadows and Highlights tool. Now I want the highlights section here. That's what I need to use. Basically I just need to pull up the amount here. I'm going to take that up to 10. And you can see how it's darkened, and now we see the detail around the top of the church here, this area here. If we untick the preview, we can see the difference. There you go. Yeah, very, very bright here. Very, very hard to see this little shutter on the top of the church tower. Pull back the preview. Now you can see that all of the detail around the church has been pulled back. So that's the job done. We OK it, and there we go. But it's not always that simple. This photo was shot earlier, so in this case the sky was much darker. It was still very, very early dawn, and so you can see here that the difference between the brightness of the church and the sky is much, much bigger. Now of course you can say, why not expose correctly for the church? Okay, yeah. If we pull down our exposure here to give an example of that, this is how it would look roughly. Yeah, if I expose to get the church correct, the rest of my sky and my background and everything would be way too dark. So in this case, getting the exposure right is very important. And what you need to do in this case is actually get the exposure of the sky right. As long as you don't push the highlights too far that you burn them out completely. In this case, I don't think it is. I chose the optimum exposure to bring out the brightness of the sky and the clouds here, and also not burn out the church here. So we can see that that's the case. Now the problem with this one though is if I use my Shadows and Highlights tool, which I can, and I can really pull back the detail here, you can see if I pull this up, yeah, I'm really pulling back. It's amazing what it can do. It's rescuing all the highlights here. Yeah, it's pulling back all of these lovely detail here. But look at my sky. I've lost all this lovely bright white parts here. If we untick, see the difference. I don't want that. I don't want to lose that. All I want to do is pull back the highlights on the church itself. So in this case, what I'm going to do is use the Adobe Camera Raw filter. Now if you're working directly in the RAW, you would open the RAW file directly in Adobe Camera Raw, but in this case I'm working on a TIFF that's already been processed from the RAW, but you can use it in Photoshop as a filter. So if we go to Filter, Camera Raw Filter, it then opens the file in Adobe Camera Raw as a filter. There we go. Now in Adobe Camera Raw we have a great tool called the Graduated Filter tool. So if I select this is the Graduated Filter tool, and these are all our adjustments. Now the Graduated Filter allows you to select an area of your picture to work on. Now normally we would use it for skies, yeah, just like the neutral density graduated filter you would put on your camera. But it can also be used the other way around. So in this case I'm going to use it for this area. This is the area I want to adjust. I don't want to touch this area up here. Now with the sky we would obviously go up here and pull down, so green to red, but I don't want that. I want to do the opposite, but I don't want to go down like this. Yeah, I want to do the opposite. I want to come up. Now you see that when you do it, it goes all over the place. The way to steady this is to press the shift key, and then it will keep it straight for you. So I'm going to select the area that I want to work on. Yeah. Now the Graduated Filter tool, basically anything under here is going to be completely affected. Anything between the green and the red is going to be affected on a gradual basis. So it's going to graduate from full effect down to 0. So here I can use my exposure tool. For my exposure tool, yeah, if I take the exposure down one stop, it darkens my mountains and the trees and everything. So I don't want to do that. All I want to do is rescue the highlights here. So I'm just going to use my highlights tool quite simply. See? And pull back the highlights, which will then pull back the detail on the church itself. And how far you do it depends on what you want to achieve. Now for me that's too much. I don't want it to go too far. That for me is a bit too much. So I'm going to take it to about there. You know, so it looks right. Okay, I can pull back all the detail on here, but then it starts to look nasty and ugly, you know, unnatural. It is a very dark scene. It was very, very early dawn, so I don't want to go too much, but I want to pull back far enough that we bring back enough of the detail in the church so it looks good. So there you go. Simple as that. Click OK. And there you go. Job done. So you can see, yeah, I've managed to retain all of the nice bright detail in the sky here and these moving clouds. I've also managed to retain the silhouette here. I haven't you saw when I used the exposure tool, it darkened all of this and it darkened my mountains, so it's kept everything that I want to do to keep here, but all I've really done is pull back the detail on the church. So if we undo that, you can see exactly the difference. Yeah, redo. Brilliant. So there you go. Simple little way to pull back the detail on buildings when they're overly bright in your shot. Hope you enjoyed this tip. Stay tuned for more. Catch you later.